The H3 is Moto's latest upper-class budget phone in India. It has some improvements over the last year's H2 and gets an original design. But is it the best budget phone in India right now? Let's unbox it and find out. What's up guys, my name is Jitesh and you're watching Geology. The phone comes in quite a premium looking box with contrasting colors that interestingly looks a lot like the inverted version of a Realme H3. We can see the H3 branding and the USP of this phone, that is the 120Hz refresh rate screen written on the front and sides of this box. It comes in 3 RAM and storage variants and I got the standard version with 6GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. But it comes in higher capacities as well. The color as you can see here is called Cobalt Blue and it also comes in a shadow grey color. On the back of the box you can see some of the key features like the Snapdragon 732G chipset, 6000 mAh battery, a 64 megapixel quad camera setup, and so on. Opening the box, you don't get to see the phone right away, but a yellow box that contains some paperwork, a SIM ejector tool, and a transparent TPU case. Then we will be able to take out the phone itself, and below that you can also get to see a standard charging cable, which has a Type-C connector on one side and a Type-A on the other. Also in there is a charging adapter, which is a fast charger rated at 33 watts. All on par with the phones in this segment. The Poco H3 comes with Qualcomm's latest Snapdragon 732G chipset, which is a newer version of the already popular 730G that powers phones like the Poco H2 and Pixel 5. The gaming-oriented chipset is supposed to have a slightly better CPU and around 15% better graphic performance than before. This one has 6GB of RAM and 64GB of storage. Higher variants come with 6 and 128GB or 8 and 128GB RAM and storage configurations. Peeling the plastic off the phone, we are welcomed with a very pleasant and new design, and the Cobalt Blue does stand out well. One drastic change is the move from glass back to a polycarbonate one. The back panel is entirely made of plastic this time around, and the frame is also plastic like before. It looks almost like glass with the holographic reflections adding to the charm. As charming as it is, it does attract a lot of fingerprints and scratches from light usage. The phone sports a capacitive fingerprint scanner on top of the power button similar to the H2. And it reads my finger quite fast. The right side of the phone also has volume rockers near the power button. The bottom of the phone has a Type-C charging port, speaker grills, the primary mic, and yes, a headphone jack. On the top you can see the secondary microphone, an IR blaster, and the proximity sensor is moved from the front of the phone to the top. And finally the SIM slot is on the left hand side, and that's it. This is a hybrid SIM slot, so it will either let you put 2 SIM cards or a single SIM and a microSD card. The card slot also has a rubber coating to help with the water resistance. Speaking of which, the phone is now splash proof with an official IP53 certification as opposed to just a water repellent coating on the last year's model. Now as you may already know that the H2 was not an original design but a rebranded Redmi K30. But this year they have managed to come up with a totally brand new design and it's quite refreshing to look at. You will also find that the H3 is noticeably beefier at over 10mm of thickness, which is quite a lot when compared to most of the phones in this segment. It's bigger than the last year's H2, which was already a big phone to start with. The phone also weighs in at 225 grams, which again is quite a lot higher than most of the other phones in any segment. But you are going to love the champion heft when you realize that it now comes with a 6000 mAh battery versus the 4500 in its predecessor. The extra battery when coupled with the latest Qualcomm chipset is expected to give very satisfying battery performance. The provided 33W fast charger is also a bump up from the 27W of the H2 last year. The most eye-catching element is of course the camera bump, and in the era of square and rectangular bumps, it's again refreshing to see Poco trying to stay away from the cliche. There's a quad camera setup sitting inside that bump which includes a 64 megapixels f1.9 main camera with wide-angle lens, a 13 megapixels f2.2 camera with ultra-wide lens, a 2 megapixels f2.4 macro lens which I have no idea why companies include, and finally a 2 megapixels depth sensor. There's also a dual LED flash within the setup. Selfie duties are performed by a single 20 megapixels camera as opposed to the dual camera setup in the H2 last year. The secondary selfie camera was actually a depth sensor last year, so we are not missing out too much. The cutout for the camera has moved from the top right of the display to the center like on Galaxy devices. And sadly, none of the cameras have optical image stabilization. The cameras can shoot videos at up to 4K at 60 fps, 1080p at up to 120 fps, and 720p at up to 960 fps for ultra slow motion. The 20 megapixel selfie camera shoots videos at only 1080p and no 4K. The main camera's default resolution is 12 megapixels and the 64 megapixel mode is actually something you have to turn on manually. I recommend taking photos in the default 12 megapixel mode as the 64 megapixel is kind of an overkill and the pictures are softer than the 12 megapixels one. Also, the 64 megapixel photos will take more time to be saved and there will be a slight lag and it will just fill up your storage with unwanted data. I will show you some of the samples that I shot. The photos have nice color reproduction and dynamic range when shot with enough light. Like I said earlier, there is no optical image stabilization, but there is electronic stabilization and it does the job well. The portrait mode also works as good as expected, and you will be able to change the amount of background blur and focus points later in the editing. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the USP, which obviously is the display. The phone sports a massive 6.67-inch fluid display with a refresh rate of 120Hz and the resolution is Full HD Plus and it supports HDR10+. The display is super smooth, but it's going to cost more battery juice and there is an option to turn it to just 60Hz inside the display settings. Apart from the UI, to take benefit of the 120Hz refresh rate, you must have an app or a game that supports 120fps. Along with the fast refresh rate, the touch response rate is 240Hz, which also helps in making the overall user interface feel snappy and fluid. The only downside is that it's an IPS LCD, so the black levels are not going to be as good as an AMOLED panel. Nevertheless, the display is bright and the colors are vivid, and the viewing angles are also on par with the displays of other phones in this price range. It is protected by Corning Gorilla Glass 5 just like last year, and apart from the camera cutout, nothing much seems to have changed or improved in the display. The Poco X3 comes with the new MIUI 12 out of the box, but it's still based on the Android 10 of last year. This phone uses a Poco launcher instead of the Mi launcher that comes in Redmi and Xiaomi phones, and apparently comes with less bloatware and no ads. The recently launched MIUI 12 is visually appealing and had a total design overhaul from the MIUI 11. The new settings app has animated icons and the new control center is also refreshing. This phone sadly doesn't support the new super wallpaper that's part of the MIUI 12 experience. The performance is up to the mark with the latest chipset and it does well and smooth with all the day-to-day tasks you throw at it. Gaming is a strong suit of this chipset and I have tried playing most latest high graphics games without breaking a sweat. The phone also has good haptics feedback and a Game Turbo app that improves the gaming experience by optimizing performance. Here is the Geekbench results with a single-core score of 564 and multi-core score of 1746, and it's much improved when compared to the Poco X2 scores of 520 and 1464. As good as the phone is, there aren't a lot of improvements over its predecessor. I have already said that the displays are similar except for the camera cutout. The selfie camera is actually downgraded from a dual camera setup to a single one. Also downgraded is the back panel from glass to plastic. Where it does improve is the design area. It gets an appealing and original design from Poco and looks very premium from all angles. The dimensions and the weight have also been increased, which is not considered to be a good change, although it also made room for bigger battery. The charging has also become faster at 33 watts. The main cameras are basically the same, but the sensor is now different, but the outputs are the exact same on paper as last year's, although the image quality has been improved in many areas. The back panel being plastic introduces a small problem now, where the panel vibrates every time an audio is played through speakers. You can really feel it while playing games or watching YouTube videos, but it's not a deal breaker. And finally the price, which starts at Rs 17,000 and ends at Rs 20,000 depending on the RAM and storage configurations. The price is 500 rupees less than the Poco X2 last year, which started at 17,500 for the base version. The phone, in my opinion, is excellent value for money. You are getting a fluid display, the latest 732G processor, and a great battery life. There are a few shortcomings, but it's a sweet overall package. I hope you found this video helpful and interesting. If you did, then please click on the like button. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe to this channel and hit on the bell icon too to get notified when I post a new video. If you have any suggestions or questions, please leave them in the comment section below as well. So bye guys, I thank you for watching and hope to see you again soon in my next video. Ciao.